Hello, it's Duncan Bolam. It's Monday the 19th of July and it's 2021. It's a long time since I recorded one of my films. But what I've been exercised by is my involvement recently in a group, perhaps a fledgling think tank, called Humane Economics. The reason I got invited into Humane Economics is because I connected with the founder on the basis of the lack of fairness in society. And over the recent 4 or 5 weeks, this conversation's grown, and hence I'm now starting to get some of my own thoughts back online, because what I specialise in is trying to get quite complicated ideas chunked down into a more simple form. This being a really good example. Career Dovetail. I created it back in 1996 when I was a trainee, a probationary careers advisor in schools and colleges, because what I found was young people didn't have any vocabulary with which to self-understand. And without that self-understanding, people are generally quite stuck when it comes to navigating or entering the world of work. So in the ensuing 25 years, these ideas have grown and gained traction and even further evolved to the point where they're actually even more relevant now than they were before. We are faced with a deluge of options in entering the labour market. There are allegedly many tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of additional options facing us in terms of buying goods, buying services, plotting our career journeys. There are now well in excess of 18, 19, 20 career changes comprising a modern day work life. Now, obviously, in the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen massive seismic shifts hit the labour market, such as the gig economy, 0-hour contracts, all of which I believe are factors in an increasingly unfair, unhumane labour market. And it's going to get worse because artificial intelligence is professed to be a brave new world of a sort of fourth and fifth industrial age, which is going to offer us increased opportunities. Whereas people who are savvy enough to have looked at the history books can tell that when you get massive technological change, you see usually 20 to 30 years of socio-economic disruption in the immediate aftermath of that. So as artificial intelligence is envisioned to lay waste to 40% of today's occupations in the next decade, and people just aren't seeing this ensuing disruption and volatility. So where I'm going is, I just want to start this next series of videos now that I've relocated from the south coast of England in Brighton, which we called our home for nearly 5 years, to Nairn, in a very different part of the United Kingdom, which is in the Highlands in the north of Scotland. And the contrast is almost difficult to get one's head around, but suffice to say, it's different. And these contrasts kind of mirror my point. So I'm starting off with revisiting a metaphor that I started to develop back in the early 2000s and it's called the Potential Thieving Triangle. And the Potential Thieving Triangle became evident to me when doing redundancy counselling, which I started to do in December 1997. And I've been doing it all these years later. So, large red triangle with a small green triangle in the base. And the reason this is a metaphor designed to sort of relay a principle is that if this is the prevailing population in any organisation, and some people get really offended by this, and if I offend anybody then I must apologise in advance. But this is the nature of the world of work. So there you go, an approximate shaded in red triangle. It's not looking very good, is it? But there we go. Potential Thieving Triangle. This is any upturned organisation in today's labour market. And we see a lot of, I meet when I'm helping the process of downsizing an organisation. What became apparent to me, it's been written about my ideas have been written about in publications like this, which is probably 15 or 20 years old now, an HR Bible. What became apparent to me was when we were doing a downsizing project, I'm an impartial agent, I'm an outplacement consultant. I've been brought into the firm to help them do the downsizing exercise. So the management team, they decide they've got to shed some payroll, which is get rid of people. It's not sacking, it's making people redundant. They haven't done anything wrong, they're not being sacked, they're just being downsized, which sounds like a pretty inhumane term anyway. But anyway, the people I started to meet who were getting walked down the corridor for me to do a pickup, which is where you start helping them through the bereavement curve of job loss. I started meeting a lot of people out of this population. And it increasingly became sort of peculiar that you would have thought if an organisation's trying to stay on track, it maybe get rid of the people who aren't passionate about their work. So these people, they're what I call a career dovetailed minority. They're really passionate about having discovered their calling, their occupation. They live to work, they don't work to live. So they don't go to work on a Monday to Friday just to get a pay packet so they can get on with living their life at the weekends and in the evenings. They're really, really passionate about going to work. And they feel a sense of identity associated with what they do for a livelihood. It's a living. They make their living from their working identity. It's their vocation. They feel as if it's something that they really care about. It helps them self-actualize. It helps them feel like they're contributing some good to society. Whereas this prevailing majority, I'm afraid I do call it a self-perpetuating mediocrity. They haven't ever really come up with a career plan. They are drifting often. They're not making up numbers. They do make a serious contribution, and without them the economy would be completely stuck. So it's not stigmatized. But the problem with society today, and for many, many, many years, is people treat their career planning like sticking the tail on a donkey with a blindfold on. They just don't even begin to understand who this person might be. They haven't put the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together upon what their qualifications are, what their passions are, what their interests are, what their personality traits are, what their values are. driving values. What do I want to achieve with my life? So my frantic visualization is how many people get to the end of their life with their potential locked up inside of them still. So I'm very passionate about sustainability. I'm very passionate about net zero. I'm very passionate about making the world a better place and leaving it hopefully better than the world I entered. But that's looking pretty doubtful right now because we're wasting human potential on a vast scale. So it started to become apparent to me that there's an inevitable line of conflict between these two populations. And this line is getting more and more stark as the years go by. Society is more divided than I've ever known it, and I would argue perhaps even history has ever known it. And there's all sorts of evidence of that in things like the nationalistic fervour, Brexit, Trumpian hate-generating activity, which just alienates the other side. All of these different nationalistic, fascist movements are alienating the other. We are suspicious of the other. Anybody who holds a different views to us, we're starting to hate them. Not just disagree with them, we're actually starting to hate them. So this model here is evolving in terms of, this is probably not too far away from where I want to finish this film, is step one, is these people here, I believe, are quite heartful. They found a way of really caring for themselves. Now, I grew up in a pretty Presbyterian doer environment, and I know that I was discouraged from really, really loving this person first. It's become very, very unfashionable to be regarded as an egomaniac, egocentric. If we love ourselves, we're an egocentric person. And I know that's not the case because I've seen people trigger the epiphany moment where they know what they're going to do with their life. I've seen them change on a molecular level, and all of a sudden they know what their purpose is and they know where they're going in their life. And they really care, and they really care about other people. That's part of it. And it's an absolute travesty that this is such a small group of people and getting smaller. That's what this film, that's what my activity, that's what I'm devoting the rest of my life to. That's my purpose now, is to expand this population. Because these people love themselves. These people want to make a contribution. They're benevolent, humane beings. These people often are quite frightened. They probably wouldn't admit it, but the most hateful people in the world, not that all of these people are hateful, I hasten to add. Not that all of these people are mediocre, I hasten to add. They're disengaged. They're fearful. They don't know where their life is going. They can't navigate the labour market. So there's something got to give, isn't it? So this career-focused, work-focused contribution, they want to make a contribution of good. Do-gooders, we might even call them. By golly, a society is out to beat up the do-gooders. But I would say I'm an unashamed do-gooder. I actually want to make a positive contribution to my community to make it better. Not least because I've got a 4-year-old little boy who I fear for his world if it stays on its present course, but because I want to exercise my gifts and talents, because it makes me feel good about myself when I help other people, when I cooperate, when I achieve consensus. But the likelihood is I'm going to get drowned out because this population is so much bigger than me. Hence, when I'm doing my redundancy counselling, I meet so many people being made redundant from the organisation who are their most dynamic employees, because their managers are often very suspicious of them because they make them feel deeply insecure about their position. So what I'm going to use this redundancy program as an opportunity to shed the real talent that makes this organisation valuable. I've experienced it so many times over the years. The most dynamic, value-generating employees have been got rid of, for want of better grammar. So where have I got to? Moving slightly off that beam, I'm trying to work out, and this might be an appeal for people to help me, is I believe there are malevolence, maybe malevolence, let's call them mals, and there are benevolence, hopefully I can spell this a bit more easily, benevolence, let's call them bens in this world. And there's a tension between these two populations, like positively and negatively charged ions. There's a tension, and as it happens, this population are winning the war for society, for civilization. And where I'm going with this is, I actually fear for love. Because if these people win, it means suspicion, perhaps hatred, insecurity, scarcity, all of these quite frightening considerations will have drowned out the bens, the benevolence, the people who want to make the world a better place. And that probably, for now, is a good place to sign off. Thank you for listening. Let's keep the debate going. See if we can generate a bit more love, a few more good beings. Thank you.